Receive a cordial welcome to another conference of this self-knowledge course. Today, we are going to see a very important topic. We are going to talk about the 3 factors of the consciousness revolution. In this topic we are going to know what are the only 3 factors that, if we put them into practice, will really lead us to awaken our consciousness, to develop our spirit, and to achieve the self-realization of our being, that is, to achieve total liberation. Currently we find millions of religions, millions of spiritual or mystical schools, millions of beliefs, practices, and methods. Most lead us to seek the divine in an external way, believing in divinity as something external to us, developing blind faith towards something or someone, and hoping that one day, or in the afterlife, we will be rewarded for having maintained the blind faith in that belief, that we think is superior to any other beliefs, and that, without admitting any doubt, is the only true one. And we also find many waves of a spiritual type that teach lots of techniques and methods to achieve spirituality, to develop psychic faculties, to achieve healing, achieve peace, abundance, well-being, and even to awaken consciousness. And we can spend years searching and trying among the sea of theories and practices that exist everywhere, without finding something that really generates a real and definitive change in us, something that leads us to experience a real breakthrough in our awakening. And many times, we end up exhausted and resigned to the hope of a future life, or we lose hope and go to atheism, denying the existence of something superior, of something divine. When the soul, tired of turning in this wheel of deaths and rebirths, comes to the knowledge of these 3 factors, and the person begins to practice them, to experience them directly every day, a regeneration process begins, that leads that soul to discover and achieve the purpose for which it descended into this physical manifestation, knowing himself. So, this will be the objective of this conference, that we know the basic tools to achieve self-realization. The revolution consists of getting out of the mechanical process of evolution and involution. And only through conscious revolution is human regeneration possible. And the factors that will allow us to revolutionize our consciousness and achieve liberation and awakening are dying in ourselves, being born spiritually, and sacrificing ourselves for humanity. Let's look at each of these factors in detail. The first factor is to be born, or spiritual birth. Spiritual birth is understood as the creation of the existential bodies of the being. Our internal bodies must be created just as our physical body was created, in sex. The first and most important change that we must make within ourselves is to start valuing our sexual energy, to stop wasting it, to start condensing it, so that we can begin the process of spiritual birth. Our sexual energy is creative, and just like when uniting with a partner of the opposite sex, and activating our creative sexual energy, we can create the bodies of our physical children. If we start to make a superior use of our sexual energy during the sexual practice, making this energy go up through our spine, instead of expelling it through orgasm and ejaculation, we will create the existential bodies of the being, which are the bodies that will allow us to have a conscious presence in the different dimensions of nature. Practicing what we will call suprasex, or sexual transmutation, we will be able to regenerate our physical body, which is currently in a lunar and degenerative state, subject to illness and death. We will pass it to a solar state, by filling it with purified sexual energy in its active form. Then, we are going to regenerate our vital body, which is that energetic body that, although we possess it, is also in a degenerative and lunar state. After having regenerated these bodies, the creation of our solar astral body, and our solar mental body, will begin to take place within us. Currently we only have a principle of these bodies. Once we have internally created a solar astral body, and a solar mental body, we can have a constant and conscious presence in the 5th dimension of nature. But we can also create a solar causal body, to be able to inhabit that world of causes that is reality. Once we create these 5 bodies, we become true men, and we will have the right to join the 2 superior bodies, which are the Buddhic and the Atmic bodies, and thus, we will achieve a full presence in the 6th and 7th dimensions of nature. This spiritual birth will take place through the practice of sexual transmutation. There are 3 basic requirements for the sexual practice to be a superior sexual practice. These are fidelity, chastity, and love. Making this practice without meeting any of these requirements will result in failure to achieve positive results in it. Fidelity implies that to be born spiritually, it is necessary to have a stable partner with whom we can work on sex permanently. It must be a just one couple, they cannot be several, as this would adulterate the work. The couple must be willing to collaborate and know the work that is going to be done. And this practice must be carried out between a man and a woman, since only when the sexual energy of the man joins that of the woman, their sexual energies are activated in a positive way, generating a creative force. Just as to create a physical child, the participation of a man and a woman is indispensable, as well as for the creation of internal bodies. Chastity is the non-expulsion of sexual energy from our body for any reason. It is do not reaching orgasm and ejaculation, so as not to waste our precious energy. In this practice, we will learn to raise this sexual energy up our spine to fill ourselves with our own energy. For this work, we must learn to value the sexual creative energy, because with it, we will do all creation. And the 3rd requirement is love. Love refers to respect for the couple, and to the spiritual longing that leads both to cooperate sexually in order to grow spiritually. The partner is our most valuable complement, since the partner will help us connect with our own divinity. For this reason, we must value our couple a lot. The place where sex will be practiced is the couple's bed, which will be their altar. This place is very special, and we must take great care of it, so that other energies do not mix. The room or bedroom where the bed is located must be in magnificent conditions of cleanliness and ventilation, free of noise, such as loud music and televisions. And there can't be more people sleeping in the same room. The superior sex cannot be practiced everywhere, but it is necessary to have a special place for this. And before starting the practice of spiritual birth, we must make some preparations. Just as it is important to have the bedroom physically clean, it is also important that before doing the practice, we make sure to clean it from heavy energies. And we can do this by chanting the Bellalin Protection Conjuration, which is a song that cleanses the environment of negative energies. And then, we close it by making the magic circle of protection to prevent the interference of negative energies and entities in sexual practice. We saw these protections in detail in Conference 7. After cleaning the environment from bad energies, we make a request, with our own words, to the Divine Father and Mother to assist us during the practice. Then we proceed to activate our sexual energy together with our partner. The activation of the sexual energy means to achieve a correct erection in the man, and a correct lubrication in the woman. And we will achieve it with conscious kisses and caresses between the couple. When I say conscious, I mean that we are not going to let the mind get involved in the process, but we are going to remain focused on the present moment, living each kiss, each caress, without letting the defects of lust lead us to overexcitement and loss of energy. Once we achieve proper lubrication of the female sexual organ, and a good erection in the male sexual organ, we proceed to sexual union or penetration. During the whole practice we will need concentration, imagination, and will. Concentration during the practice is never letting the mind wander in thoughts, but concentrating each one on their own energy. It is also important the wise use of the imagination, in order to consciously direct sexual energy inwards and upwards. We must remember that for the wise, to imagine is to see and create. And we also need to have the will, to maintain control of our sexual organs, and never get overexcited, so as not reach orgasm or ejaculation. The difference with the sexual practice to which we are accustomed will be, that instead of making rough movements to get overexcited and reach the point of orgasm, we are going to make smooth and gentle movements, only when necessary, to maintain sexual potency. And we are going to make the sexual energy ascend through our spine, through a simple respiratory process. This respiratory process will consist of inhaling deeply and slowly until we fill our lungs of air, and taking the air to our sexual gonads. There, we are going to retain the air, while we imagine all that sexual energy that like a golden thread comes out from the testicles in the case of men, and from the ovaries in the case of women, towards the coccyx. And from there, we make it ascend, with our conscious imagination, through the entire spine, up to the point between the eyebrows. And once there, we exhale the air, while we pronounce the sound. Then, both repeat the whole breathing process, and when reaching the point of exhalation, you do so by lengthening the sound. Then repeat the breathing process again, and the third time exhale with the sound. And you keep repeating this procedure to gradually upload all the sexual energy. Each process, inhaling, retaining, and exhaling, should be lengthened, trying to reach 20 seconds in each process, but not push yourself, as your lung capacity will improve with practice. If at some point sexual potency drops a bit, that is, the man loses a little erection, or the woman loses a little lubrication, the couple will make gentle movements to recover sexual potency and continue raising the energy. This practice can be continued for as long as the couple wishes, or as long as they have sexual potency. And as soon as the potency is completely exhausted, because all the energy has already been uploaded, the practice ends. The success of this practice will be to withdraw from it without spilling the sexual energy, that is, without ejaculating or reaching orgasm. Some important recommendations to consider are: it should be practiced only once per night. With patience, prudence, and perseverance, we will advance vertebra by vertebra and body by body. It is important to consider not bathing until 2 hours after having done the practice, because although at first we do not see it, a powerful electromagnetic energy moves in us in this practice, and if we bathe immediately, it will affect us. Another important thing to keep in mind is not to perform this practice during the menstrual period, or if the woman is pregnant or lactating. It is also important not to use contraceptives, as they isolate and affect the creative power of sexual energy. And we must bear in mind that this practice is a natural control of fertility, because the success of the practice is to always withdraw from it without reaching orgasm or ejaculation. And that was the first factor for consciousness revolution. The second factor is to die, or psychological death. Psychological death refers to the disintegration of each of our negative ways of being or psychological defects, which keep our essence trapped and conditioned, which keep our energy contaminated, and which keep us in the degenerative state in which we currently find ourselves. Eliminate them, so that the virtues of our soul are born in us. It is our negative moods, our negative emotions, and thoughts, as well as the negative ways in which we relate to our physical body, what keep us in constant sickness and physical weakness. Thus, we see that the illnesses that we experience on the physical plane come from the contamination and the misuse that all our psychological defect make of our internal energies. By eliminating them, we will develop the virtues that are opposite to those defects. By eliminating our anger, we will develop patience, self-control, and capacity to love. By eliminating our laziness, we will develop willpower and diligence. By eliminating our lust, we will develop purity and chastity. By eliminating lies, greed, and pride, we will develop honesty, loyalty, and humility. So, we see that in order for us to truly develop a virtue, it is necessary to understand and eliminate the defect that had it trapped. Virtue is the pure form of the essence. It is the energy and wisdom that came from the understanding and elimination of the incorrect way of being. In order to start the process of psychological death, we must learn to self-observe ourselves. And this turns out to be the most difficult, due to the mechanicalness in which we find ourselves. If we learn to observe ourselves, we will discover each of the manifestations of the ego within our mind, feelings, and actions. It is necessary to know how to differentiate the acts of the ego, the acts of the personality, and those of the consciousness. When we discover that what is manifesting within us is not our consciousness, but our ego, and we eliminate it, we begin to see the radical changes that will begin to be generated in us. Not as a repression, but as a real change, which will come from observing and acknowledging our mistakes, our wrong ways of being, and rooting them out. Self-observation, as we explained extensively in the last lesson, is directing our attention to our inner world, to seek to make a change in ourselves. And what can we observe in our inner world? The different thoughts, the internal talks between the selves, the pleasant and unpleasant emotions, the moods we find ourselves in, our mechanical reactions, and everything that alters us in the face of any situation. And discover in those reactions the manifestation of the ego within us. When you discover through self-observation any of the manifestations of your ego, you must judge yourself, to come to understand how that feeling that you are feeling, that thought that you are thinking, and that action that you are doing, is not from your consciousness, but from a psychological defect. To make yourself aware that is draining your energy and hurting others and yourself. And make yourself aware that there is a portion of your consciousness trapped there. Immediately you understand it is a defect, you must beg your particular Divine Mother to disintegrate the defect or self that you have discovered. Mentally ask her, Divine Mother, eliminate this defect. Through this procedure is how consciousness is released, awakened, and integrated. To the extent that you work seriously with this procedure, you will be releasing the essence, balancing your energy centers, and awakening your consciousness. Each time you will be able to see more and more subtle details, which will allow you to see the progress. The sense of self-observation will progressively sharpen, as you use it, until you fully awaken it. I will give you an example to illustrate how to practice psychological death. Let's say I'm driving calmly down the street, but when I get to the corner, another vehicle dangerously cuts me off, almost causing an accident. If at that moment, I don't become identified with the situation, if I don't start to react immediately, I will be able to observe everything that is happening in my inner world. An ego in my mind appears and tells me to yell at the other driver stupid. Another says, insult him. Another I is already thinking, who does he think he is? Another yells, go get him. If I observe myself, I will notice that I already feel like fighting. I notice that the emotional center is tense. I observe the self that wants to take revenge. I wonder who taught him to drive. Says another self in my mind. I think, I hope it crashes. Another self says, that car could have scratched me. I could observe that I can't stop thinking about it. How irresponsible, says the other. Other selves make comments about what happened. I feel resentment for what happened. Sometime later I still remember the scene. I still have anger. I can't forget what happened. I feel weak, because of all the energy I've been wasting with that situation. Each of these manifestations is produced by a different detail of my anger. And if I can observe all this, I can transform it. I must beg my Divine Mother to disintegrate all those details that I am observing, and do not react as the defect wants, so that consciousness can manifest. Immediately, when the defect wants to manifest itself, I ask for the elimination of every detail that I observe in my mind, in my emotion, in the words that I want to say, and in all the instinctive reactions that I have, so I keep control over myself, and I can act in a conscious way. That procedure is called ongoing death, and it implies spending the whole day in self-observation to be able to realize the different manifestations of our ego and go on rescuing all the trapped consciousness. Then, if we sit down to reflect on the different events of the day, and the wrong inner states in which we entered in the face of them, we can make new discoveries, and continue asking the Divine Mother to eliminate everything that we understand. This procedure is called reflective meditation, and it helps us release large amounts of consciousness. And that is the second factor for consciousness revolution. The third factor is to sacrifice for humanity. Sacrifice for humanity is selflessly sharing this knowledge with all humankind, to ensure that others have the tools, so that they can make a change in themselves, stop suffering, awaken their consciousness, and develop their own wisdom. Wisdom is the beginning of everything. If we do not receive it, we die ignorant of the very purpose of our existence. If we reflect on this, and value these teachings, we will realize the responsibility that this represents. When we receive this knowledge, and we begin to apply it, we begin to experience transcendental changes within ourselves. Then, the need to share it with others begins to be born in us. Because we understand that just as at some point, we were ignorant of this knowledge, and now we see how useful it is for us to have it. In the same way, there are also many other people in the world, whose soul is waiting for someone to bring them the knowledge of these three factors, in order to reach the purpose of their existence. Sharing this is how we show love for humanity. Now, there are certain conditions that we must consider when sharing this knowledge with others. The first is that we must give away this knowledge for free, without receiving anything in return, otherwise, it is not a sacrifice but a business. The second is that we must give it to the whole world, without any restriction of race, age, nationality, gender, social condition, etc. Since we all come from the same source, seeking to achieve the same purpose. And we must deliver it to everyone, but always respecting their free will. The third condition is that we must deliver the knowledge pure, without adding other things to it, and without removing or hiding anything from it. Nor should we mix it with any other knowledge. Those are basically the conditions: give it for free, give it to anyone, and give it pure. Now let's see some of the reasons why we should sacrifice ourselves for humanity. First, because the reason for the being is the being itself. Second, so that we start to stop being selfish. Third, because a work of love is fed with love. Also, because each of our psychological defects has its own debt, and if we don't have Dharma to pay for that debt, we will stagnate in the process of psychological death. We owe the karma of 7 existences. If we intend to self-realize, we must pay these karmic debts in one existence. When you owe a lot, you need to have a good income. And when we sacrifice ourselves for humanity, we receive Dharma that allows us to pay for our karmas, so we don't have to pay for them with pain. Also, sacrifice generates the merits of the heart to be able to advance in our inner work. The egoist advances very slowly, if at all. Another reason for helping others is that of what one gives receives, and he who gives nothing receives nothing. But he who gives wisdom receives wisdom. And he who has and does not give of what he has, even the little he has will be taken from him. If a person teaches, each time he teaches he understands better. Every time we help our inner father to share knowledge, he teaches us something. Every time we review the conferences, we understand them better. And if we are teaching, we are creating a center of gravity around our internal work. And something important to know is that our different psychological defects want us to forget about this work. If we don't teach the knowledge, we will start forgetting it. Now, there are different ways to sacrifice ourselves for humanity. For example, inviting our friends to receive these conferences. Talking to our family members and acquaintances about this knowledge. Also looking for ways to invite people we don't know. Sharing the invitations for the conferences, and sharing the videos, or making our own invitation for people to become interested in receiving this knowledge. Or doing advertising campaigns on the internet. Also studying the conferences and preparing yourself to teach them. Then, teaching the conferences in person or virtually. Making videos, or in any way in which it is possible to take the teaching to others. Opening different spaces where knowledge can be shared. Then, preparing others so that they continue teaching. Also, motivating people to start practicing the 3 factors. And doing the work to awaken our own consciousness, to be able to guide them better. If we get to verify the strength that is received by giving this knowledge, we will be encouraged every day to try to do more to help the other brothers of humanity to also receive it. And that is the 3rd factor for consciousness revolution. And this has been today's topic. These are the 3 factors for the awakening of consciousness. Remember to leave any questions or comments you have. I invite you to the next conference in which we will talk about the inner chatter and the psychological song, in which we will know these 2 psychological aspects, which take away a lot of energy from us and keep our consciousness asleep, and we will learn how to achieve inner silence and how to forgive others. Do not miss it. See you next.